see what happened? So we're going to go to where? Stand right up here. I want to speak French. Here we are in a French country, and Richard Holbrooke speaks a fantastic French. You speak Flemish? You know Flemish?
Okay, we'll try English for the moment if you don't mind. Moving on to French, maybe. My name is Thomas Kleine-Brockhoff with the German Marshall Fund. We'll have this press availability with the three of the four speakers. Radek Sikorski, Foreign Minister of Poland, unfortunately had to leave us. So we don't need to introduce anybody here. You've all heard what our panelists had to say in the West Under Challenge. Please fire away, and before you do so, please state your affiliation and then your question, please. We have 10 minutes.
No, this is your...
Go right ahead.
For Mr. Kosachev, I'm from the Romanian news agency Newsin. Mr. Kosachev, how do you see the fact that the NATO summit is going to be organized in Romania, a country that criticized the placing of the U.S. military bases, and if you can confirm or if you heard if Mr. Putin is going to meet President Bush at the summit, at the NATO summit? Thank you.
First, Romania is a member state of NATO, and Russia has just to respect that choice of Romania. We do not have any good explanation for the reason the United States plan to deploy its military base in Romania. But again, it is, we may like or dislike that, but we have nothing to do with that. This is a choice of Romania. Otherwise, yes, I hope that meeting between Mr. Putin and Mr. Bush can take place while them being in Bucharest. I think that we will have a greater possibility for making progress in rather important issues which are still on the agenda of our bilateral relations, mostly about the anti-missile systems being deployed in Poland and the Czech Republic, which is an extremely important issue for Russia.
Thank you very much. Your colleague next to you in the first row.
From Agence France Presse, a question for the Minister. Richard Holbrooke raised the issue of the Afghan-Pakistan border, this new power center, a fault line, if you like. There have been differences over troops, commitments, etc. You spoke about this at the EU Council. Do you have the feeling that all EU countries understand the importance of this region and the need to commit? And is France actually ready to go down on its strength, particularly now that Canada is looking for help?
You're talking about Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Well, mainly Afghanistan. It happens that yesterday we had a fantastic, really fantastic, open and free talks for more than 3 hours in between the 27 Ministers of Foreign Affairs. And Mr. Sikorski, I mean, the Polish minister, is very used with Afghanistan. He spent 2 years there, and I spent 2 months every year during 8 years. So we were talking about the reality and facing our colleagues. And it was very interesting. Yes, this is a major concern. We cannot leave from Afghanistan. We cannot support any idea to just to abandon our friends there. There is a good president, election, constitution, a lot of progress. By example, only one. 6 million young Afghans are going to school right now. It was absolutely just unimaginable some years before. And among these 6 million, 2 million are girls. Okay, but in the same time, we have to work on the future. And the only solution, it was out of the 3 hours of discussion, of course, the only, not solution, but the only way, not an escape way, the future, is certainly to implement all, let's say, the project with the Afghan, to involve the Afghan in their Afghan problems, at the level of NGOs, at the level at the grassroots, the community levels, and at the level of the army and the police, etc. This is the only way. And it was very, very interesting. But, you know, we discovered that, in fact, the European Union is involved in Afghanistan, all the countries, with soldiers or with projects, etc. And we have not been able to find, let's say, a political concern, a strategic paper, a real strategy for helping our friends.
I think this is the moment to bring Richard Holbrooke in, because you've been engaged in the Afghanistan issue. Couldn't talk about it in the other room as much as you will responding to this question.
Well, I'm leaving for Pakistan and Afghanistan tomorrow, so I'm not really as clear on what to do about the border issue as I will be when I come back, I hope. Look, I believe that there is a theater of war in this world which you might call AFPAC, Afghanistan, Pakistan. It is in the western half of this area, Afghanistan, NATO is engaged against a definable enemy, the Taliban. In the eastern part of it, where that enemy rests, recuperates, trains, and is supported by al-Qaeda, the NATO troops don't have access. Until the West understands that this is a single theater of operations and that it has to include a Pakistani policy, we're not going to be able to deal with it successfully. Secondly, the border area, if the border area is not fixed, the situation in Afghanistan will go on for a long time. I think that AFPAC, this area I'm talking about, will be a war long after Iraq is over. We'll be engaged in Afghanistan for another decade. Bernard Kouchner and I were talking about this earlier today. Not, I hope, continually fighting, but this will require a very long-term commitment of Western resources, international resources, and a new policy towards Pakistan. The second issue in Afghanistan is clearly the drug issue. Drugs are destroying the country, not in the normal sense, but in the sense that the country is in the process of becoming a narco state. And if it is a narco state, the only beneficiaries in the long run are the Taliban and corrupt drug lords. And yet, to get rid of the drug economy without replacing it with a viable agricultural sector would weaken the country still further. Afghanistan imports food, but they could produce more food of their own if there was a sustained, comprehensive agricultural program. The third issue, of course, is governance. The government is corrupt in many areas, underpaid, ill-trained, and the security is not sufficient. So this is a very long-term commitment.
Now, I think we have time, given the schedules of the gentlemen up on this podium, for one more brief question, and that question was right here, and then asked for a brief question and a brief answer.
My name is Dominic Kajasic. I'm Holbrooke from Holbrooke Cross. And I would like to ask especially Mr. Kouchner and Mr. Kosachev. We are talking in Brussels that Kosovo will be not president for only 1 month. But there are already so we do recognize Republika Srpska, we do recognize Kosovo, and what will be our answer to those regions?
Well, look, this is a complete canard. There are no precedents set by Kosovo. UN Security Council Resolution 1244, passed in the summer of 1999, created an uncertain final status for Kosovo. Sooner or later, it had to be addressed. Why certain countries, including Russia, insist on treating Kosovo as though it sets a precedent is beyond me, because that only weakens Russia's own position. Russia should take the same position that the United States and the European Union have taken, which is it's a unique problem which sets no precedents for any part of the Russian Federation, or for Africa, there's similar concerns among African countries, or for China, where there are similar concerns about areas like Taiwan and Tibet. There is no precedent.
Richard Holbrooke is completely right, and he knows the problem, and I know the problem. It was absolutely impossible not to do something. It was absolutely impossible to wait, like my Russian friend was offering us. We tried and tried to let them talk together, not to impose any solution. As Richard said, the resolution 1244 was very clear. We had to find a final statute. And we did. Unfortunately, we had no choice. 14 months with Marty Ahtisaari's insistence. Plus, in addition, coming out from my country, we offered to the rest of the world, to the international community, to restart negotiation for 6 other months. They accepted 4. We tried and tried. They were unable to talk to each other. I don't blame the Serbian side or the Kosovar side. I wanted to find a solution. I wrote a letter yesterday in the press with Carl Bildt because of the anniversary of the dead, the assassination of Djendjic, my closest friend. In that time, I phoned to him. We phoned to each other. He was the prime minister in Serbia. I was in charge of the UN system in Kosovo. And we were talking to each other. And we knew in that time that only one solution was able to be established by the people themselves. We felt, unfortunately we felt, I wanted strongly to find a solution, a common, acceptable solution. And the only one was after autonomy. And it was already done, in fact. Autonomy plus independence. Without independence, we were trying harder. And we failed. So it was the only solution, and we'll see. I hope, writing this letter with Carl Bildt, offering to our Serbian friend to take it as a start, a rebirth. The beginning of the solution is certainly after, step by step, to go to the European Union. Certainly both, Serbia and Kosovo. But of course, first Serbia. And they are ready. And we offer them. What can we do? One time, when 2 communities are unable to talk to each other but with guns, but by killing each other, this is better to separate them.
And one last thing. There's absolutely no ability for Republika Srpska to secede from Bosnia. That was discussed, considered, and rejected at Dayton with the full concurrence of the 3 co-chairs, Carl Bildt, myself, and Igor Ivanov for the Russian Federation. It is not an option for Banja Luka to secede.
So given that the question was actually directed to Mr. Kosachev, he should have the chance to answer, although the 2 gentlemen will have to leave.
Before Mr. Holbrooke and Mr. Kouchner leave, I have a chance to tell them that they are totally wrong. Thank you. No, thank you.
History will see and decide.
They are totally wrong because they believe that in case they will say that Kosovo is not precedent, everybody else will agree. And this is wrong, because it does not matter what Brussels or Washington or any other capital would say about that. What matters is how people in similar situation will feel about that and treat that situation afterwards. People living in Abkhazia, living in Republika Srpska, living in northern Cyprus. And I do not find the argumentation of Mr. Kouchner that we had no choice, we had no time to wait as a sustainable one, for the reason that the northern Cyprus, as an unresolved conflict, exists since 1974, without any country like France or, I do not know, the United States demanding any quick solution. And the conflict in northern Cyprus maybe will exist in some more years and maybe decades. And the conflict of Ossetia, South Ossetia, and the conflict of Abkhazia exist not since the early 90s. They exist since early 20s, when Comrade Stalin decided to include these 2 territories into Georgia. Mr. Stalin, just to mention one thing for you, in the year of 1914, wrote a very famous article on national question. And the theory of Mr. Stalin at that time was that all nations are divided into two types: cultural nations and primitive nations. And in that article, he considered Georgians, for natural reasons, he was a Georgian, as a cultural nation, and Abkhazians as a primitive nation, which is to disappear sooner or later, according to his theory. Then, during the 20s, he took a decision of including some primitive nations like Abkhazians into Georgia, and Abkhazians knew what the fate of their nation would be. They have never accepted being themselves a part of Georgia. They joined Russia before Georgia did it, both Ossetia and Abkhazia. Many people does not know that, but this is true. So the conflicts in Abkhazia and South Ossetia exist by themselves, not for the reason Russia decides that these conflicts should exist, not for the reason Mr. Kouchner or Mr. Holbrooke think that Kosovo is not a precedent. And unfortunately, prospects for a peaceful political solution for other similar conflicts are now extremely controversial and limited because the precedent of Kosovo has been established. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kosachev, and I'll thank all of our speakers in absentia. For one matter of housekeeping, we will try to have one of the press availability after these sessions, after every of the main sessions, but depending on the schedule of the speakers, so it will be brief, like this one. Thank you.